The MCAT Cars Podcast, session number 37. The Cars section of the MCAT gives thousands of pre-meds nightmares every night. Whether you're an ESL student, lack confidence while reading, or are a slow reader like me, Jack Westin and the medical school headquarters are here to help you score higher in every section so you can be confident you're ready to get the MCAT score of your dreams. Welcome to the MCAT Cars Podcast. My name is Dr. Ryan Gray, your host here, as well as the host of many other podcasts on the MedEd Media Network. If you haven't checked out the pre-med years, you should. In this podcast, we're going to talk about potentially some test anxiety. And in the pre-med years, I actually had a psychiatrist on who deals with a lot of medical students with test anxiety. That episode is 337, which you can hear at medicalschoolhq.net/337. Let's go ahead and jump into our article today. It's a great one and a fun one, all about celebrities. Jack Westin back for some more MCAT Cars podcast. How you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm excited. It's going well. I'm excited to get back into some more MCAT Cars podcasts. I know as we're recording this, it's an MCAT test release, score release day. And so this is the day where we kind of get both sides of the coin. We get the students who are like, oh, I didn't do as well as I wanted. And so then I say, well, go listen to the Cars podcast if you haven't. And then we get the emails and DMs on Instagram saying, oh my God, thank you. I listened to the MCAT Cars podcast and I crushed Cars and the rest of my MCAT. So today's a good day for a lot of people and maybe not the best day for others, but there's room for improvement. I want to know from you, when, let's say a student takes the Cars course with you and they come back and their score isn't as good as they wanted it to be, what is kind of the first question or first steps that you potentially go through with a student like that?
That's a great question. It really comes down to how they studied, how do they review. The course is very comprehensive. It goes through everything you can think of when it comes to Cars, like how to read sentence by sentence, to pick up on ideas, to use those ideas to answer questions. So I run through a series of questions that kind of gauge their understanding of the skills. Granted, most students who take the course and work hard end up very satisfied. But on occasion, very often, if you're not doing well, it's because you just didn't practice enough. You just didn't do the work that was required. So it really comes down to, are you realistic? Did you put in the right amount of time given your goals, given how much time you have to study? And usually we talk about that and they decide, you know what, I could have probably given this more time, or I could have probably spent more energy on this particular weakness, right? And once they come to realize that it's something that they can overcome, they end up excited, motivated to study again. But I always tell students, take a couple days, weeks off, right? Usually when if you get a bad score, you're going to be in a state of shock and a state of denial. You're going to go through all the 5 stages of grief, really. And that's normal. That's fine, but you can do well. I mean, I have had students I just had an email from a student who took the MCAT 3 times. I don't know. I wish I could say his name, but I'm not, because I didn't get his permission. Yeah. But he got a 123 twice and a 124 the third time. And he took the course, worked hard for like three months or so. And he emailed me today saying he got a 129 on Cars. So yeah, so it's a big improvement. Yeah, and he was so happy. He was so excited. But I also get students who email me and, they started off, practicing at a 121 and they get their score back and they're still at a 121. Yeah. And it also comes down to your nerves, right? If you're not really focused. And I think this podcast really helps with focus, trying to understand the sentences, but you do need the ability to critically think. And I'm excited because today we're going to kind of look at a question tied to this. I kind of created a question so that students can kind of see how the thought process that's required when you read.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we break down everything. So like you'll know where you made a mistake, right? You'll know, okay, this is what I should have done. It happens, it happens all the time. Students always ask me, what does it take to succeed? What does it take to be a good test taker? It's not your intelligence. It's not your IQ. Obviously, if your IQ's high, you're going to have an easier time. But it always comes down to how bad do you want it? How hard, like this guy worked his butt off 3 times. It didn't work out, right? And then the 4th time, you got this crazy great score. I mean, I don't think he got less than a 129 on any section.
That's awesome.
So, yeah. So, it comes down to how bad do you want it and how willing are you to, admit that you have weaknesses and holes that you can improve on.
Yeah.
And when you come to realize that, this is going to be an easy process. I think most students who are hesitant to sign up for the course or just to prepare, to practice, they think that they're inherently weak at this and they'll never be able to improve.
Yeah.
And I challenge that. I really don't believe that at all. Like I think I've had students, and by the way, this person was an ESL student. So
nice.
English is either their second or third language. I know that because I've talked to him before, about this. So, it really doesn't matter as long as you believe in yourself and you're willing to keep working on it. But that's what I tell students all the time is try to focus on your weaknesses, see what you did wrong. You probably didn't review well, right? Reviewing is super important. If you don't know what to look for, it's hard to review.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it. Those are the big things. And anyone can improve. Just give yourself a chance to improve.
Nice. All right. So we have another awesome passage to read today. If you want to follow along, the link to this article is in the podcast show notes, which if you're listening on an iPhone or an Android device, whatever you're listening on, if you tap on the image or swipe left or right, usually the show notes are kind of hiding in there. So you can follow along with us. That's the best way to listen to this podcast is follow along, print these out, whatever you need to do to read ahead and then listen to us go through it. So we have an awesome article here that looks interesting. So I'm excited to jump in. What do we need to know about our article today?
So I like these kinds of articles because they're very conversational. And I think students have a hard time with conversational articles. They don't sense the nuances of the speech, of the text, I should say. And that leads to confusion.
Do they not sense it because maybe they potentially get a little lazy? They're like, oh, this is interesting, and then they don't kind of pick it apart the way they should?
It's not that they're lazy, it's that they're not accustomed to it.
Okay.
They're not focused on it. Like I see that ESL students struggle with this because they're not used to sarcasm, in the English language. They may have sarcasm in their own language, right? But they don't sense it. They just don't notice it. So it comes down to focus more than being lazy. But I think most students become lazy because they don't know what to focus on, right? So they just read it in a very kind of in a really boring manner. Like they don't really pay attention because they don't know what to pay attention to. Okay. So yeah. So I mean, we'll talk about that and we'll kind of break down these sentences. I mean, I do want to stress something. A lot of students are always interested in taking the course, and they're wondering, what are the differences between what we do in the podcast and in the course? Course is not focused on reading comprehension. Course is focused on critical thinking. So how to read is important. You have to be able to understand, the comprehension side. But what's more important than that is using the information that you found to answer the questions. It's a totally different animal. Yeah. But you have to know how to read. You have to know how to sense these things and get better at it, which is why I think this podcast is a great kind of precursor or prerequisite to potentially taking the course.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So let's go ahead and start paragraph 1 here. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. And whatever their advantages, the rich and famous are just as subject to the laws of physics as the rest of us. All right, so interesting, right? Every action, equal opposite reaction. I think most pre-med students will know the laws of physics and what that refers to. Interesting twist here that it's talking about the rich and famous and how they are it's applicable to them as well.
I couldn't say it better than that. Yeah. Go ahead, keep reading.
On the spectrum of strangely celebrity-specific forms of self-expression that have proliferated in the mid to late 2010s, the Notes app apology occupies one end of the spectrum, a public performance of contrition, dramatically self-flagellating before an audience of millions. All right, so super long sentence here. Strangely celebrity-specific forms is potentially confusing as to what they're talking about. It's forms, F-O-R-M-S forms. Self-expression. The Notes app apology, I don't know what that is. It's linked here in the article, so I wouldn't know what that is, but let's hope that we don't have to know specifically what that is. But it's comparing or kind of telling us what it is. A public performance of contrition, and that definition, I think, I don't specifically know off the top of my head. And then the dramatically self-flagellating before an audience of millions. And flagellating, to me, flagella is just like kind of flailing around, like arms moving all around.
Yeah.
Right. So super long sentence, lots of things I potentially don't know. And so I would keep reading and hopefully we'll pick something up as I go.
Yeah, I mean, you should try to understand this sentence, and I think you did a great job at it. What could you guess what they're referring to? Celebrities, apology. So, I mean, if you understand the word apology, I think that's all you need, right? Contrition is apology, basically.
Yes.
Dramatic, this idea that you're dramatically whatever before an audience of millions, that is too much, but it gives us a sense of what's happening, how the author perceives this, right? It's this dramatic gesture that you're doing, right? Mm-hmm. So as long as you know it's a form of an apology that's taking place, that's it. That's all that's really important here. So yeah, it's celebrities that apologize. I mean, if you think about that, we see that all the time, right? Yeah. I mean, which celebrity hasn't apologized for something?
For something,
right?
Yep.
So okay, so good. So again, we're going back to the rich and famous and the whole equal but opposite reaction or whatever they talked about. But it's not clear exactly what is equal and opposite as a reaction. So let's go ahead and keep reading. So we have something to do with this expression of apology.
Okay. All right, next sentence. This week, we've seen an unusually dense concentration of the social media apology's perfect inverse, the defiant act of self-defense used to rally the force of public opinion against a perceived attack. All right, so now it looks like the author is talking about the opposite. Instead of apologies, it talks about this inverse, self-defense. So it sounds like potentially when this article was written, the author is pointing out that a lot of these celebrities are defending themselves against attacks.
Excellent. That explains equal but opposite reaction.
Oh, right? Yeah.
You get attacked, I attack you back, right? So in a way, that's what's happening here, right? They apologize when they have to, but then they also attack when they have to. Mm-hmm. So great job. Yeah, and look, it says apologies perfect inverse. And inverse was the key to knowing, look, there's an equal but opposite reaction.
Yep.
Right? Okay, good. So we now know we're talking about celebrities who attack. Now, we don't know really who they're attacking, but some attack. Okay, that's going on. All right. Now, it does mention social media, which is a common way that people interact with one another. So keep that in mind. But okay, sounds good. By the way, when you see a passage like this or an article like this, usually the first paragraph is going to be dense, but then near the end of the paragraph, they clear it up. They tell you what they really want to know. What they want you to know. So, brace yourself for that. I always tell students that, be careful, keep reading, and you may see something that is really important come up. Go ahead.
All right, second paragraph. On Wednesday evening, the actress Olivia Munn posted to multiple social media platforms a statement she titled, "A Short Essay on the Ugly Behaviors of the @Fug Girls." And Fug is F-U-G, Fug Girls. All right, so now we're given... the first paragraph is kind of setting up the attack and the apologies. And this one is a specific actress, Olivia Munn, who I love. And she posted on social media an essay on the ugly behaviors of the Fug girls. So we don't know, or at least I don't know what that's referring to, but I'm sure we will get into it.
Right. I mean, I do want you to know that this is probably an example of a celebrity, someone rich and famous who is on the attack, right? Because it says a short essay on the ugly behaviors of the Fug girls. You don't need to know who they are, but you should know that this is an example of that. It's illustrating this attack.
It seems to be a very common writing style or writing technique where an author kind of sets something up and then dives into an example.
That's very common on the MCAT. Very common on and anything we read.
Okay.
The reason why this happens is because the author wants to prove their point. What is the best way to prove their point or support their point? By providing an example, right? Or by providing some kind of reference to an authority figure, someone who agrees with that point, right? So, imagine the author saying, see, this is, Olivia Munn doing this, or see, this is someone else agreeing with my statement.
Yeah.
So it's a very common theme. Yes, absolutely.
It's a very common display of a term that you'll have to know for psych-soc, the confirmation bias of, I'm going to tell you what I think, and then I'm going to show you all these examples that back it up.
Right.
All right. So next sentence here. Munn is referring to the popular celebrity fashion site Go Fug Yourself and includes, for reference, screenshots of a week-old post headlined, "If only I had $1 for every time I've said, oh my God, Olivia Munn," as well as a biography containing full names and photographs of Go Fug Yourself's co-founders, Heather Cox and Jessica Morgan. All right, so now we have who this Fug girls are. So it's a website, a celebrity fashion website, and apparently Olivia Munn is a very popular person on that website.
Yeah, so this is, again, more specifics on how Olivia Munn is defending herself, right? She's posting, the headline or whatever, and she's also bringing up the co-founders' names, maybe in a way to attack them later. Who knows? But yeah, let's go ahead.
Yep. Okay. Munn accuses Cox and Morgan, in their coverage of both her own fashion choices and those of other female celebrities, of propagating the idea that our worth is predominantly or singularly tied to our looks. So it looks like it says Munn is accusing, so kind of attacking, if we want to go back to kind of the attacking and apologies that we talked about in the first paragraph, attacking these two publishers of this website of kind of that the website says, hey, women are only there for their looks.
Yep, that's it. Okay. So yeah, that's exactly what's happening. And this is pretty deep, right? Because not only do you have to understand what's happening, right, that Olivia Munn is attacking these particular individuals, but the author wants you to know what the individuals said, right? The individuals in question were basically kind of making fun of Olivia Munn, right, and her style. So now, is that deep and important to know? I think you should understand it and know it, but the MCAT will never test that. The MCAT's not worried about, how do they attack Olivia Munn? They're not going to test that, right? They're not going to put an answer choice that says, they attacked her based on her looks. But what they will test on is, well, how did the author support the fact that celebrities are defending themselves? An example of that would be Olivia Munn and this whole ordeal with Fug girls. Okay, go ahead.
All right. As a successful actress, Munn acknowledges there are some things you sign up for, but she argues Cox and Morgan's commentary isn't included in that bargain, citing a Maryland high school's recent instance of sexual harassment within its senior class as inspiration for speaking out. All right, so Munn is saying, I'm a celebrity. I know that I'm in the spotlight, but she's saying that what the Fug girls are saying isn't appropriate. Yeah,
and it's funny because this example is providing another example.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like Olivia Munn is like saying, "Oh, look at this high school where they had sexual harassment. So don't do what stop doing what you're doing, right?"
Yeah.
So MCAT would probably never do this, an example within an example, but it's not a bad thing to understand and read.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, next paragraph. Munn's statement is unusual in its length and specificity, but her qualms with media coverage appear to be shared by other public figures. So it looks like the author is now setting up more support outside of Munn to say, hey, Munn's not the only one.
Okay.
On Sunday, the pop musician Lizzo subtweeted an ambivalent Pitchfork review of her major label debut album. Writing with signature brio, people who review albums and don't make music themselves should be unemployed. All right. So we have a musician, Lizzo, who apparently doesn't think critics should exist.
Right.
Okie dokie. That's interesting.
It's just another example, right, of
Yep.
someone attacking someone else, a rich, famous person, Lizzo in this case, attacking their critics.
Yeah, so kind of keeping it straight in my head, we have Munn attacking this website for talking about looks. We have Lizzo attacking critics for reviewing music.
Yes.
Okay. The remark earned some measured backlash, though it also read like an understandable response to an unprecedented level of exposure for a previously lesser-known artist not accustomed to such scrutiny. So this is an interesting sentence. So it looks like it's saying that this artist's, this musician's response was it had backlash, right? So people were pushing back on it, potentially saying it wasn't warranted. But then it goes on to say, but it's also understandable because she was a lesser known artist and not accustomed to kind of public scrutiny, potentially.
Right. Now, what do you think the author cares more about? The fact that it's understandable, that it's okay, or maybe that, this is a bad thing, right? Like, what side do you think the author is going for right now?
Ooh, that is a good question. So we have, oh man. I would say that the author is on the side of the artist, saying because the author of the article is saying, though it is also, meaning I think the author is supporting the artist, that it's an understandable response.
Exactly. I mean, the fact that the author brought up though, right, and then said that it's okay, means, and that came later, means that the author probably sides on that side, on that agenda, right? On they see it that way.
Yeah.
So it's probably more understandable than it is a bad backlash. I mean, it does say it earned some measured backlash, but that doesn't, it's not necessarily negative, right? I mean, getting backlash, just the author telling us that there's backlash is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Necessarily.
Okay.
That's
not quite as true for a superstar like Ariana Grande, who responded on Wednesday to an E! News segment criticizing Justin Bieber's cameo at her Coachella set with a since-deleted tweet reading in part, "One day, everybody that works at all them blogs will realize how unfulfilled they are and purposeless what they're doing is. I can't wait for them to feel lit inside." Okie dokie. So super long here sentence talking about now Ariana Grande, who is apparently not happy with anybody who's writing on the blogs.
right. And a lot of students always ask me, well, look, there's so many examples: Olivia Munn, Lizzo, Ariana Grande. What do I do? How do I keep all these in mind? Well, they're all referring back to the same thing. Right. So it shouldn't be too hard if you can organize your thoughts and understand that they're all examples of celebrities being defiant, right? Defending themselves, having a reaction to, this negative criticism in some ways. Okay. Great job.
Okay. Next paragraph. Remarkable as it may be for so many instances of celebrity retaliation to flare up in a single week, the idea that critics are fair game for rebuke by those they cover is not a new one. All right, so the author is saying, hey, this has happened a lot this week, but this thing isn't necessarily new. It's just a week that there's a lot of them.
Great.
The stand-up comedian Michael Che, who serves as co-head writer for Saturday Night Live and co-anchors the show's famous Weekend Update segment with Colin Jost, frequently takes to his Instagram stories to express what, per his handle, @CheThinks. That was very hard to read and understand, but now I get it. So let me read that last part again. Frequently takes to his Instagram stories to express what, per his handle, @CheThinks. So he goes to his Instagram stories to express what he thinks. That was weird to read.
Exactly. So that's a play on words, really.
Yep.
And that will confuse the heck out of students. And they think they're reading a foreign language, like a language they've never read before. That's what it seems like.
Yeah.
But I love how you broke it down and you took your time to kind of analyze it. Nothing should scare you, even if you're in, ESL or, I don't know if, English is a third language, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you break it down like you did, you'll be fine. So yeah, let's just make sure we know what's happening. So Michael is a co-head writer for Saturday Night Live, which is a cool segment on that show.
Yep.
Frequently takes to his Instagram stories to express, per his handle. Per his handle means like as his handle suggests, right? What she thinks. So you're basically given a statement about how we're reading about what Michael thinks, right? What Michael Chi thinks. So that's what's happening, like you said. Okay, great. Go ahead.
All right. Often, that means airing his grievances against journalists who cover the show, including Daily Beast columnist Samantha Allen and freelance writer Seth Simmons. So two specific examples of journalists who this Michael Chi attacks, maybe. Airing grievances. All right. One of Chi's latest targets was UpRock's writer Stephen Hayden, who published a piece last Friday titled, "Why Does Everyone Still Hate SNL's Colin Jost?" So again, another target of a grievance is this other writer and a specific piece that this journalist wrote.
Okay.
She responded with a hyperbolic, transparently false accusation that Hayden performs fellatio on stray dogs. Oh, man. I might have to mark this one explicit. So hyperbolic, again, for potentially ESL, for someone whose vocabulary isn't very strong like myself, I think hyper means more than. I don't know what bolic, like the root bolic means, but hyper, I'm assuming means just like over the top, right? Over the top, okay. Transparently false, meaning he wrote it so that everyone knows obviously it's not true, so that he doesn't get sued, hopefully. Fellatio on stray dogs obviously is not something potentially that people do.
Right. Hyperbole is basically an exaggeration, so it's kind of a derivation of that word. But yeah, you don't really have to know that, but like you said, the rest of it is important. So understanding that, it's an attack. You don't need to know what fellatio on stray dogs is, but you can probably imagine it's probably
not good.
Very bad. Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. So as long as you know Michael Chi is, or Che, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, is basically attacking Hayden.
Yep.
You're good to go.
Okay. Hayden, for his part, responded with relative equanimity, and the resulting furor died down after a few days. So equanimity, I'm guessing this is saying, hey, Hayden responded with equally mean stuff, potentially, right? Equally harsh or equally whatever to what Che did.
Yeah, it's a good guess, but like because you see the word equa, right?
Yeah.
So equal, it kind of refers to, you don't need to know the definition. It doesn't matter, but you're like emotionally stable.
Yeah.
So it's a mature response.
Okay.
That's what it's trying to say. Relative, mature kind of response. Okay.
The incident mostly serves as an unusually outlandish example of a recurring pattern, both for Chi himself and other performers with considerable platforms that they can wield to their own advantage. So again, the author is saying, hey, this is another example. We have Chi and other people using these platforms to kind of wield, like using them to express their opinions or attacks or whatever.
Right. And that goes back to the whole first paragraph, the reaction.
Yep.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. Next paragraph here. Such lashings out come from an understandable place. So again, we have this understandable, which is was brought up in paragraph 3 as well. So the author is saying, hey, it sounds like the author is saying that he's empathetic to these stars.
Exactly. Yes, absolutely. Understandable place. This is such a direct statement that the author is making. So it's something that the author wants you to know, right? That it's okay. It's okay that they backlash.
Yeah.
Right. Even though some of this backlash is very, very harsh.
Yeah. Okay. As public figures, pop stars and comedians alike are subject to an overwhelming amount of vitriol, misunderstanding, and bad faith critique. So the author is saying, hey, people in the public light are subject to, they're getting all of this hate and critique that, and he specifically says, or she specifically says, bad faith critique, meaning it seems like it's critique not that justified. It's just there to potentially get eyeballs.
Right.
Okay. Thanks to social media, it's both harder than ever for stars to shield themselves from the noise and easier than ever for them to respond directly to what surely feels like an all-out assault on their character. So the author, pointing to social media, to the platforms that he or she used in the previous paragraph on how they can defend themselves.
Right. And it says it's both harder than ever for stars to shield themselves. So, it's being empathetic towards the celebrities, the stars.
Yep.
Right. Saying, look, they have a hard time. Right. And I don't quite believe that. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion here when they read this. But when you're reading this article, you are supposed to imagine it from the author's perspective. Right. And I actually recommend that you debate whether or not you agree with the author. But when it comes to the questions, you have to be the author. You have to answer it as if you're the author. Okay, go ahead.
Let me just pause right there with that comment. What is debating with the author? What does that help with?
It helps you stay engaged.
Okay.
It helps you stay focused on the objective of the author.
Okay.
What is the author trying to do? They're trying to convince us that it's understandable, right? In a very rhetorical kind of conniving way, in a way. It's not necessarily conniving, but by saying, look, these stars are getting so much hate, vitriol, which is kind of like acid, misunderstanding, and bad faith critique. Well, are they always bad faith critique? Some critiques are good, right? Maybe they just can't handle it, right? So having an open mind, and I think that's why this test is so important, is it shows whether or not you can think for yourself, right? Whether or not you can see things from different perspectives, which is a very important part of a physician's role in the hospital or in the clinic, right? Being able to make their own decisions, not just going with what everyone else says, right?
Yeah.
Is important. So like when you're debating the author, it's okay, but don't lose sight of the author, right? Don't get too ignorant or have an ego and completely shut down the author. But it's not a bad thing to challenge the author in your mind.
Yeah. It keeps you engaged and keeps it active reading versus just passive.
Exactly.
Okay. Sometimes these responses crash down upon private citizens who find themselves transformed into unwitting scapegoats, as when Brie Larson and Netflix's typically cheery corporate account join forces to, quote, Netflix upon an obscure, if casually misogynist, Twitter user. All right, so it sounds like the author is giving an example of potentially when this has gone awry.
Yeah. And so you may be thinking, well, maybe the author's not for this, right?
Yeah.
Because the author is saying, look, imagine they Netflix, it's kind of a play on the word again. There's no such thing as a net flex, but flexing as in like, showing your muscles, right? So your power.
Yep.
At least Netflix is power. Okay.
Yep. These cases are clear-cut instances of individuals wielding their massive followings against others who have none, relatable but nonetheless obvious exercises of skewed power. So skewed power meaning people who have audiences versus those who don't and can kind of put their social media army to use.
Right. Now, throughout this entire passage or article, we've been saying, oh, look, the author's been empathetic.
Yeah.
And look, at the end, it says it's skewed power.
Yeah.
But that skewed power is not negative. It's just the reality of it. It's a very neutral point of view, right? That the fact that it's skewed is okay. That's just the reality of it. That's just how life works, right? In this case, these celebrities have more power, but that's not being used in a negative way.
Yeah.
How do I know this? Because it doesn't say it using any negative kinds of words. Skewed is not a negative word. That's just showing you there's an imbalance.
Yeah.
But it's not saying it's a bad thing. It's not saying this terrible imbalance. If it said terrible, then I would say, okay, wow, the author maybe is not so empathetic towards the stars. Maybe the author is actually for the critics, right? So I don't see any of those words that kind of throw me into the direction of the critic, right? So I'm definitely leaning towards the stars.
Okay. All right. So I think overall, it sounds like if we kind of ignore those last two, even though it's kind of neutral, that might kind of scare me to want to lead to one direction with this article. But it sounds like the author, with the way that they used the words like relatable or understandable, it sounds like they are understandable that comedians and musicians and other stars, it's understandable that they attack sometimes.
Correct. So we're going to do a question right now to test how confident you are about what you just said.
All right. Go ahead and read the question.
All right. So the author's attitude towards celebrities attacking their critics is most accurately described as. So can you summarize that? What is that really trying to say here?
It's basically asking, what is the author, in our opinion, what is the author's take on the stars and what they're doing on social media, attacking these critics?
Right. What is the author's attitude towards these celebrities attacking their critics?
Yeah.
How can you describe that? All right. I'll read all the answer choices and then we'll go through it. A, enthusiastic. B, neutral. C, sympathetic. Or D, disapproving.
Okay. I think we got an easier one here because we've been talking about it, I think, with kind of the words that the author chose to use, understandable responses, and the lashings out come from an understandable place, as quoted in the article. So I think I would go with sympathetic. Enthusiastic is also kind of like, oh, well, maybe it's enthusiastic, but I don't see anywhere where the author is like standing up and cheering, going, yeah, it's deserved. This is awesome. We need more of it. I think that would lean more towards enthusiastic. Disapproving, I think is way off in neutral, I don't think, other than those kind of last two sentences where it was kind of a neutral tone. The rest of it seemed to be sympathetic.
Sounds good. So, a lot of students might think, well, at the end, they said skewed power. So doesn't that mean the author doesn't like this? And this is the strategy portion of this question. The question is asking, what is the author's attitude towards celebrities attacking their critics most accurately? So generally speaking, even if you did think that last statement was the last paragraph was kind of leaning towards, or the last sentence of the last paragraph was leaning towards disapproving, overall, which one does it sound more like? Sympathetic or disapproving or neutral? And I would definitely say sympathetic. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to neutral, that basically means that the author has no side, right? Like it's just the author expressing something. And the tone of this passage, if they ever ask you about the tone, would be neutral. The tone is very neutral. But the question is not asking about the tone of the author. The question is asking about the attitude towards celebrities attacking, right? That's not neutral. That's definitely sympathetic, right? So a lot of students get confused on that. Like, when is it neutral? Depends on the question, depends on where they're going with this. The whole language was very neutral, right? Everything we talked about was said in a very calm way. The author didn't use very negative words at all, right? Just quoted people using negative words. So if we were asked about the author's tone exhibiting these arguments, then these ideas, then I would say neutral. But if it's asking about a specific idea and how the author feels about a specific point of view, then in this case, we're justified in saying it's sympathetic or empathetic. Okay. Yeah. So that comes from not just reading. Reading is not enough. You also have to kind of understand how to approach these questions, what they're asking, how to think about it. In this case, we're thinking about the bigger picture, not just one specific paragraph, like the overall picture of this passage. And that leads us definitely to picking C.
All right, there you have it. Another great article, another great breakdown, some great explanations from Jack on how to power through these passages, how to power through the paragraphs, and really understand what the author is trying to tell us. If you are looking for more help with your MCAT CARS prep, go to jackwestin.com. Check out his free passages every day that you get in your email inbox. I got one this morning, and it was all about Confucius, I think. It was a very confusing Confucius essay, but it's a great one. When you get your email, it'll take you to Jack's website. You click on the day, and it opens up a interface that is similar to the MCAT interface. So not only are you getting practice, you're also getting practice on the platform as well, which is awesome. And then you get a lot of great examples. This one, as I'm looking at it, over 2,600 students have submitted an answer for it. There's also a discussion board as well where you can talk about the questions. Again, go to jackwestin.com, click on practice and the CARS daily passages. Hope you have a great week. We'll see you next time here on the MCAT CARS podcast.